Today I'm going to give you some suggestions on how you can write more gender-inclusive societies. And in this, I'm assuming that you're writing fantasy or sci-fi or something else where you can actually create a society from scratch. So what we're going to do today is talk about the societies that we create from scratch. I am not talking about how to change our society or any other society. I'm talking about how we can create a new society from scratch in our fiction that can be gender inclusive. And by gender inclusive, I basically mean a place where being man, woman, transgender, non-binary, whatever, is not strange, is not frowned upon, that's just how it is. Now, some of these ideas are more controversial than others, and as usual, I would love to discuss it in the comments as long as we can be respectful. So with that, let's get into it. How to create and write gender-inclusive societies. So one of the first and easiest things that we can do is make use of or create gender-neutral names, pronouns, and titles. With names, that is relatively obvious. Have names that are not coded by gender. Either, if you're writing fantasy especially, we make up names all the time, so just make up a bunch of names and don't make them male or female names, just make them names that anyone can have. It is also entirely possible to use names that we already have in our world, but just use them as gender-neutral names, so that if a character is talking about their friend Adam, we have no idea if that's a man or a woman, because we know that there are Adams who are men and Adams who are women. I mean, if you try, you'll notice that it's not actually that difficult to do this. This is actually a very easy thing to do. It might require you to think in a slightly different way than you used to, and it might require your readers to adjust, but it's entirely possible and relatively easy. Now, I also mentioned gender-neutral pronouns, and with this I do not mean that you should use a gender-neutral pronoun to about every single character. Although I would love to read a book or a short story or something where you do that, because I think that could be really fun. But I'm not saying that is what you have to do. You can still use he and she, except when you don't know the gender of the person you're talking about. So what I mean by this is that your characters should always use gender-neutral pronouns when they're not sure about the gender. Basically, if your character is talking about their friend Adam, don't have the other character say, "Oh, I'd love to meet him," but say, "Oh, I'd love to meet them." This is also relatively easy, and I want to stress again that this is appropriate and something that I think you should do. Using singular they when you're not sure about the gender is something that we need to normalize, and more people just need to do in general, so why not put it in your fiction? And in your fiction, you can also take it a step or two further. And by that I mean, for example, never assuming the pronoun of a character that your character is talking to. Even if that character looks like a man, say they until you're sure. And I mean, if you're creating a whole new society, which is what we're talking about here, why not create a society where they have a form of greeting that makes sure that you find out the other person's pronoun? I don't think that would be impossible at all, and that would be a society where trans people or non-binary or all of the different kinds of gender would be comfortable and always have the right gender assigned to them. I think that would be pretty nice. And moving on from that, I also mentioned titles, gender-neutral titles, and that can be things like using the word magician instead of wizard or witch, or say wizard about everyone, no matter their gender, or witch about everyone, no matter their gender. It can also be, for example, a king rules the country and a queen is their spouse, no matter the genders of these two people. Or if you're not comfortable with that, make up another title for someone who rules that is used in a gender-neutral way. And this doesn't just go for people who rule, it also goes for people who sew, people who farm, people who fish. I don't know, either way, just make sure that you use the same title for any person with the same position or power or skill or profession or whatever it is, no matter their gender. So it's not king because you're a man, queen because you're a woman, but rather king because you're the ruler and queen because you are the spouse of the ruler. Again, if you're not comfortable using king and queen, you can make up your own titles. Now let's go more into what society actually looks like, because one thing that you can do is make a society where bloodlines is not important. And this is just inclusive of all LGBTQ plus people and a whole bunch of other people as well. And I'm going to explain what I mean. Basically, very often, especially in fantasy, we have societies where it is very, very important whose son you are, whose daughter you are, who your parents are, and what blood flows through your veins. And this doesn't have to be important. You can make a society where an adopted child can inherit the land just as well as a biological child can. Yeah, I mean, that's not even unheard of in history, actually. I'm not going to get into that, but that has been done and could be done. Basically, the point is that two spouses or more spouses, or just single people, don't have to have biological children. They can adopt, they can use surrogates, they can do a whole bunch of other things that I can't think of off the top of my head, but don't make it so important to have children. This will make life a lot easier for gay people who can't have children or don't want to go through the act that will get them children, or trans people who are just unwilling to have kids in the way that they biologically could have kids, or asexual people who just don't want anything to do with any of that at all, and the list goes on. And I want to point out here that bloodlines can be utterly unimportant for everything, and that includes magic that runs in the family. You can make that magic not care about blood, but care about something else entirely. It's magic. It should be able to know who belongs to the family or who doesn't, even if it doesn't go by blood. There are also the kind of magic systems that have only one gender being able to use the magic. So if only women are able to use magic in your world, make it so that a trans woman can also use magic. And maybe like a gender fluid character can sometimes access the magic and sometimes not. That could be a lot of fun. That really could be a lot of fun. I should do that sometime. The point is, and I know I'm going off on a tangent here, we're getting back to societies, but the point is that if you're writing about magic, you cannot make excuses. You cannot say that, no, only biological women can use this magic because that's how magic works, because you decided that that was how your magic was going to work. Anyway, moving on, getting back to societies, and this part is sort of a slippery slope. It is controversial. I'm not going to say anything else. And I want to remind you before I say this that I am once again not saying that this is how the ideal society is. I am not saying that this is what you have to do to make a gender-inclusive society. I am not saying that this is something that I want our society to do. I'm just saying that this is something to consider. This is something I want to mention to help you think outside of the box, and you don't have to go all the way to what I'm saying. You can stop somewhere in between, but I want to say this anyway. And the idea is a society that doesn't assume gender at birth. In our world, gender, or rather biological sex, is assigned at birth, and it is assigned based on external characteristics. If the baby looks like a girl, it's decided it's a girl. If it looks like a boy, it's decided it's a boy. And that doesn't take into consideration a whole lot of other things like secondary sex characteristics. It doesn't take into account hormones or genetics or anything like that. It is simply based on what the baby has between their legs. And I want to remind you here that sex is, scientifically speaking, biologically speaking, a spectrum. Most people fit in very well in one end or the other, but a lot of people don't. So basically what I'm saying is that, in my opinion, a truly gender-inclusive society wouldn't assume biological sex or gender at birth based on what's between the baby's legs. I would personally love to read more about societies where children are not assumed boy or girl, where they can switch between gender expressions, switch between pronouns, and that's not a strange thing. And they can just eventually settle on where they feel most comfortable, whether that is man, woman, somewhere in between, sometimes one, sometimes the other, or whatever. And then there's the whole thing of, like, is something manly or womanly? Why is something considered something men do and something women do? Would that even be a thing in a society that doesn't assume gender or sex at birth, but rather lets people grow into it? There's a whole lot of things to explore there, and I wish there were more things out there that actually did explore this. And most importantly, I wish there were more things out there that explored this about humans and not about aliens or fantasy creatures, because I have seen that, but I want to see a society of humans that does this. I think it would be possible. Again, I'm not saying this is something you have to do, but if you do it, or if you know someone who has done it, I want to read that. Now, once again, this suggestion, just like everything that I have mentioned earlier in the video as well, it's just that. It's a suggestion. It's something to help you think outside the box. It's something to nudge you in a direction of a more gender-neutral society, and you do not have to go to these extremes. Just maybe, look at what I've said and think about how can I make this work in my society, and how can I make my society a little bit more inclusive using some parts of these ideas that I brought up. And again, these have just been some of many, many, many ideas that are out there. I have some more ideas. I am sure other people have other ideas, and I would love to discuss it in the comments. Again, just keep it civil. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.